Do you feel like you're stuck in CrossFit, like you're pounding your head against the wall and just not getting any better? A lot of times this comes from doing too much CrossFit and not enough aerobic work. Our aerobic system is extremely important to the sport of CrossFit, despite CrossFit being an anaerobic sport. We still need the aerobic system to support those anaerobic power outputs that we're trying to hold over the course of 3, 7, 10, 15, and 20 minutes. So today what we're going to be talking about is how to build that aerobic system, how to build that aerobic system from a modality standpoint or a cyclical standpoint and from a CrossFit standpoint. We're going to get into different progressions, what your aerobic system is, different training modalities, and just kind of break down what we have found that works best for our athletes. As an organization, we specialize in creating aerobic systems for athletes as we predominantly get bigger athletes for the sport. Bigger athletes for the sport need higher aerobic systems because they are going to be producing much more power output per rep than a smaller athlete in the sport. And so we've cultivated how to do that and how to develop that over the last 12 years of coaching. And so we're going to get into kind of the nitty-gritty details of that, progressions of it, methodologies of it, and how we best kind of develop that in our athletes. So first off, what is your aerobic system? Your aerobic system is the ability to deliver oxygen to working tissues so that the tissues can use that oxygen to support work, contractile function. When we do aerobic work, we build a stronger heart, better muscle capillaries, which capillaries are things that deliver blood into the muscle, and we develop better and more efficient breathing patterns, and our heart actually becomes more efficient at beating in specific movement patterns. This involves the central nervous system and your ability to not just skyrocket into 190 beats per minute or whatever your max heart rate is, but rather slowly build into that if we're doing something like touch and go power cleans. When we're exercising, our aerobic system is always functioning. Even if you're performing a 1 rep max snatch, your aerobic system is always on. This is the system that continuously supplies blood to the tissues. So even when you're doing CrossFit work, as I described earlier, the aerobic system is there to support it. It really starts to take over the predominant energy system after 20 minutes of work, but it's still there lingering in the background, and we kind of want to look at this as percentages of how much work each energy system is doing. There's a common, or has been a common misconception that you're only using one energy system at a time while training, and in reality you're using all three. And so depending on the work that you're doing, the intensity of the work that you're doing, the movement that you're doing, those percentages will give and take and play around a little bit. And what we're trying to do with CrossFit is keep our workouts as aerobic as possible for as long as possible, so a higher percentage of aerobic system work, which means not a ton of lactate accumulation, for longer during our workouts, and being able to close out that workout with more of our lactate in our system. All right, so getting back to what the aerobic system does for us when we're training. Creating a more efficient heart. So as we know, when we're doing a movement like a barbell or a thruster or something along those lines, our heart rate starts to creep up. Or during a CrossFit workout, we feel our heart rate starting to creep up. Oftentimes, especially in more powerful athletes and often bigger athletes, there's an inability to control or manage subconsciously that heart rate. What that means is you'll get on a bike or you'll go to pick up a barbell, and because you're so conditioned for power output, that heart rate just skyrockets right up to 190 beats per minute or close to max effort. And this actually starts to carry over into a lightweight barbell thruster or air squats or wall balls or something along those lines. And so when we're building that aerobic system, we're also teaching our heart rate to operate not at 190 beats per minute, but rather we're teaching it to operate at 145 beats per minute or 130 beats per minute. And through that, with the aerobic work, we're able to build a more efficient heart to help you with movement patterns that you see in the sport. So instead of doing a 30-pound wall ball or a 20-pound wall ball and your heart rate getting up to 175 beats per minute and then 10 reps later you're on the ground gasping, now we're able to do that with our heart rate creeping up to 155 beats per minute for sets of 10 and go back into more mixed work or find that spot that we're able to recover on the workout in. As well, when we're doing this, we're typically working at lighter percentages of our 1RMs. As well, when we're doing aerobic work, we're typically working at lighter percentages if we're doing mixed aerobic work of our 1RMs. And the goal of this is to create a more efficient breathing pattern so that we can learn and understand how to breathe through our movements. When we break aerobic work down, we always tend to bring it back to the most simplest form. And the most simplest form is running. When we're running, we're never cutting off our oxygen supply. Or I shouldn't say never, but there's very rare times that we're cutting off our oxygen supply completely. Our goal is with CrossFit to be able to go and do that. Never cut off your oxygen supply or never overly brace in specific movement patterns. So because we're doing our mixed aerobic work, which we'll get into and do a little bit, at lower percentages of our 1RM, we're able to brace less and figure out more efficient breathing patterns so that we can create something like a chest to bar pull-up as a more aerobic movement, or a wall ball as a more aerobic movement, or a handstand push-up as a more aerobic movement. We can even get down to lighter weight deadlifts and create a more aerobic response from those to allow you to cycle lightweight barbells faster or moderate weight barbells faster. The other thing that it does is creates more mitochondrial density. And I'm sure if you've ever YouTubed an exercise physiology or heard anyone talk about of physiology at all, you've heard the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. This is where all your energy is, or a majority of your energy is made to exercise. So when we're doing our aerobic work, we're creating more mitochondria. And so if you get it to a point where you are tapped out, you've crossed that red line on a workout, we have more mitochondria to flush that blood, create more oxygen, get more ATP into the muscle, and you're actually able to recover even though you've tapped that red line a little bit faster. And so this works super well for team athletes in the sport who have work to rest ratios. Now they're able to produce a lot of power, relax during their rest times, and recover better to go reproduce that power. As well, individual athletes are going to have to, most of the time, do specific sets to complete a workout, and we're developing that mitochondria in order to deliver more oxygen, take less breaks between those sets, and or create higher working sets for individuals. Along with mitochondrial density, we get the more capillary density, so more blood getting into the muscle through more capillaries. And this is just gonna, again, if we're delivering more oxygen to the muscle, we're essentially getting more energy as an output. A lot of programs or training just tries to overcomplicate things with just too many variables inside of their aerobic work. They might try and do mixed intervals inside of their training sessions. So we go from a low power output into a high power output into a very high power output inside of a training session. If we are looking at just developing our aerobic system, especially for somebody who's coming into the sport or is at the level where they're like, I'm kind of stuck, I'm not really developing the sport, I feel like I'm just beating my head against the wall, we need to bring it back and keep it as simple as possible. And so what we've found is the MAF or Maffetone maximum aerobic power is the best way to develop your aerobic system for the sport. So this, when you're looking at heart rate zones, this would technically put you in that zone 2 area. And so what you do to keep this very simple is, his method is to take 180 minus your age, and that is your maximum heartbeat that you can't exceed when you're doing your aerobic training. If you guys have any sort of chest strap, heart rate monitor for the wrist, you're going to want to be using this to monitor where you're at inside of your cyclical, running, etc. work, because this is how if you're staying under that heart rate, you're developing your aerobic system. And for CrossFitters, it is extremely easy, because what we know is to go hard. It is extremely easy to exceed that heart rate if you don't have some sort of feedback to that heart rate. So this is what we found is the easiest and most simplest way to develop your aerobic system. As you age through the sport, we're going to need to do different things to improve your aerobic system. And this is where coaching comes in, and where we'll see some of those other intervals, those mixed intervals, mixed pacing come in, is as the athlete advances through the sport. But again, when we bring it back to the basics, if you're struggling to improve, this is probably, you just need to keep it simple. As boring as it is, if you keep it simple for 3 to 6 months, you're gonna see improvements. Now, when I say 3 to 6 months, this is why we have season structures. So when we start the season, we're gonna do machine-based work. And we're gonna stay inside of a 30 to 60 minute window. And something like that might look like a 1K row into 30 cal row, 30 cal echo bike, 30 cal ski, 30 cal C2 bike. You'll change machines each round to kind of mix things up, but this gives you a lot of sport-specific feedback. We can understand our pacing structure and attach it to a heart rate when we're on the rower for that first 1K row. And then we're biking at calories. So we're understanding where we're at calorie-wise, or what pace, RPM, whatever it might be calorie-wise, compared to a heart rate. And this will start to give us a better understanding of how to pace these machines out. And so that's kind of the off-season work that we're using to build our aerobic system. We can also do something like running. For more powerful athletes, running is a great way to improve your aerobic system. A lot of the sport, especially for more powerful, bigger athletes, is moving your body in space. And there is no bigger thing to do that, or no better thing to do that than run. As those bigger athletes, more powerful athletes run, they're going to be developing and learning how to move their body more efficiently. And this transfers over to things like burpees, chest to bars, bar muscle ups, ring muscle ups, every sort of gymnastics movement. So we can use a lot of simple running protocols, again, keeping it under that maximum heart rate of 180 minus your age. And then we can mix it in with machines as well. So go run a mile, C2 bike, 4K. Go run a mile, C2 bike, 4K. And just back and forth between that. Can even mix in a ski erg there. Run a mile, ski erg 2K. And then we have an a lower extremity, upper extremity exchange of blood. So it's teaching the body to clear lactate a little bit differently, although you won't be developing much in your aerobic work. So that's kind of our off season. Then as we get into our mid season, as we start to need to improve our CrossFit or sport specific movements, we get into a little bit of some blended work. And so this is more of like a 2 times a week or 1 time a week with some mixed intensity levels in there. And this is where we can kind of blend things. Again, we started off simple, progressing into the blending. So for this session, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 of a cal row, cal C2 bikes, cal ski erg. After each round, we're gonna do 1 wall walk, 10 box jump step downs, and then 10 Russian kettlebell swings. The reason we chose those movements is because 1, the box jump step downs allow you to move your body in space. Again, we kind of talked about that and hit on that. They also allow you to kind of monitor your heart rate. So if you need a second to pause on the box to bring that heart rate back down, you can, or pause on the ground. The Russian kettlebell swings, we're getting under load and teaching our body to operate at a specific heart rate under load. And that will help you to cycle barbells better, to be under load lifting, so sandbags and worms. And so we also have that wall walk in there to create some body weight movement and teach your body how to operate well under a specific heart rate with your body weight. For a running based interval, we might do the same thing, but after each round, you're going to do a 200 meter run, 10 burpees, 10 GHDs, and then another sport-specific run in there of 10 shuttles. In season, we're looking at doing aerobic work 1 to 2 times a week, depending on the athlete, but we're now focused predominantly on keeping your aerobic power high, improving your power output, and improving your efficiency at your power output. So what we're using aerobic work for now is only support work to help keep the aerobic system around. If you don't train it, you lose it. So we're gonna hit a 30-minute session inside of the season. Can get upwards of 40. If you're more trained, like some of my athletes are, we're probably looking at getting upwards of 60. But 20 double unders, 50-foot walking lunge unweighted, 1 wall walk, 10 GHD sit-ups, 10 Russian kettlebell swings, 10 V-ups, 10 dumbbell deadlifts at a 35-20 load, 3 strict handstand push-ups, 10 air squats, 20 alternating step-ups to a 24-20-inch box, and then 5 kipping handstand push-ups. So we got a long chipper, touching a ton of CrossFit related movements at lighter loads than you'll probably see in your in your testing. But this is going to allow you to train the body and understand how to produce capacity under efficiency, or be efficient while you're producing capacity. So hopefully this gives you guys a good breakdown of your aerobic system, how to train it, what it is, different methods of training it, and what might be your limiter inside the sport. As always, please give us a subscribe and a like. If you're looking for a coach, please hit us up. We would love to help you guys out this next season.